She sat at the corner of the crowded café, her hands nervously folded in her lap, staring at the menu she couldn't afford. Emily had exactly $5 in her purse. That was all she had left until payday from her part-time library job. Still, when her friend convinced her to try a blind date, she had agreed. Maybe, just maybe, this was the chance for something good to finally happen in her life. She had dressed as neatly as she could, in a faded but carefully ironed dress, her hair tied in a simple braid. Across from her was an empty chair, waiting for the man she was supposed to meet. Every time the cafe door opened, her heart jumped, but each time, it wasn't him. Minutes stretched into nearly half an hour. At another table, near the window, a man in a sharp suit watched her. His presence commanded attention, broad shoulders, a strong jawline, and a look that suggested he belonged anywhere he went. Yet, his eyes weren't filled with arrogance, they held something quieter, heavier, as if carrying the weight of the world. He stirred his coffee absent-mindedly, pretending to look at his phone, but his gaze kept drifting back to the young woman who sat nervously alone with only a glass of water in front of her. Emily finally waved the waiter over and asked, almost in a whisper, "What can I get for $5? The waiter, with a kind but awkward smile, suggested a small pastry and a cup of tea. She nodded, cheeks burning. All around her, people were laughing, ordering full meals, glasses of wine, and towering desserts. She folded her hands tighter, willing her date to arrive before her tea got cold, but the man never came. The suited man by the window, Alexander, though the world knew him as CEO of one of the largest companies in the city, felt an unfamiliar ache in his chest as he watched her check her phone again and again. He could tell the signs. She'd been stood up. He had seen women play games, chase after his money, put on shows of elegance, but he had never seen someone so vulnerable and real. Finally, he stood. His polished shoes clicked against the tiled floor as he walked over. Emily looked up, startled. He smiled gently, leaning down just enough to seem approachable, though he was every inch the commanding presence of a man used to boardrooms and negotiations. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Is this seat taken?" Her eyes widened. "Oh, I'm actually waiting for someone." He glanced at the empty chair, then at the time on his wristwatch. "If he hasn't arrived by now, I doubt he's coming. May I keep you company? Just until you finish your tea." Something in his voice made her nod, even though her pride screamed that she didn't want pity. He sat down gracefully, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. They talked, at first awkwardly, then with surprising ease. She told him about her love for books, how she worked at the library and sometimes wrote little stories no one else ever read. She didn't mention her struggles, but he noticed the way she avoided ordering anything else, the way her eyes lingered on the menu just a second too long before she forced herself to look away. When the bill came, she quickly placed her $5 crumpled on the tray. But before the waiter could take it, Alexander smoothly slipped his card instead. "You didn't have to," she started, but he raised a hand. "Consider it a thank you," he said. "For keeping me company tonight." That night, Emily went home thinking she would never see him again. He was handsome, clearly wealthy, and kind in a way that felt almost unreal. Men like him didn't stay in the lives of women like her, but she was wrong. The next day, as she shelved books at the library, she looked up to find him standing there, holding his son's hand. The boy, about 6 years old, had the same piercing eyes as his father. He clung shyly to Alexander's leg while his father introduced himself properly. "I didn't tell you yesterday," he said with a small smile, "but my name is Alexander. And this is Jacob. He loves books more than I do, and I thought maybe you could help us pick out a few." Emily's heart softened instantly. She knelt to Jacob's level, asking what kind of stories he liked. The boy lit up as he talked about adventures and heroes. Watching them together, Alexander felt something shift inside him. For the first time in years, after losing his wife and raising his son alone, he felt a spark of connection, of possibility. Days turned into weeks. He found excuses to stop by the library, sometimes with Jacob, sometimes alone. They shared coffees, walks in the park, conversations that stretched far past closing hours. He admired her quiet strength, her honesty, her lack of pretense. She admired the gentleness he showed his son, the loneliness he didn't quite hide. One evening, after a long day, she found herself sitting in his car outside her small apartment. He looked at her seriously, as though weighing every word. "Emily," he said, voice low, "you should know. I'm not just a man in a suit. I'm the CEO of a company that puts me under a spotlight I don't always want. But with you, I don't feel like the billionaire everyone sees. I feel like myself. Her breath caught. She whispered, and you should know. I only had $5 the night we met. I thought you'd laugh at me if you knew. Instead, he reached for her hand. That was the moment I knew you were different. You weren't pretending. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were real. And that's what I've been searching for. It wasn't a fairy tale where everything changed overnight. She still worked at the library. He still ran his empire. But now, their worlds had begun to intertwine, bound by a simple truth. She had walked into that cafe with $5 and walked out with something priceless, his heart, and for Alexander, who had everything money could buy, that was the one thing he thought he would never find again.